I'm Qui-Gon Jinn, and this is my guide to consistently winning low MMR games. So a while ago I watched a video uploaded by Sir Action Slacks about how to gain MMR when you're stuck in the trench. I thought it was a great video, you guys should go watch it, and he made some really good observations about these low MMR games which I rarely hear anyone else make. Let's take a look at 3 of these observations now, and remember that these only apply to low MMR games. Number 1. Everyone picks a carry. Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree on this. Not every player picks a carry every game at this MMR, but I think most people would agree that many lower bracket players will almost never pick a support hero. Some of the most popular choices are instead heroes like Wraith King, Bloodseeker, Phantom Assassin, Legion Commander, Anti-Mage, Ursa, Riki, and Slark. These heroes are all farm-dependent late-game carries. They focus on securing farm and kills for themselves, with the eventual plan that at the end of the game they will be the strongest player on the map, and will be able to win the game.
But why?
It's a very interesting question. The reason players favour certain heroes is that they've had positive experiences with them. I don't actually remember my first game of Dota 2, but I do remember the first game in which I was the strongest player on the map. I picked Viper, I killed my way to an Assault Cuirass and a Heart of Tarrasque, and man, did it feel good. Take the Phantom Assassin, who is convinced that if her team doesn't feed, she'll be able to farm and win the game easily. Her reasoning seems sound. She's been able to wipe out entire teams on her own in the games where she's been fortunate enough to get farmed. And it's that powerful memory that she bases her entire strategy around. My brother actually raised objections to many of these sweeping generalizations that I'm making, but, well, he's a carry player. Number 2. The early game doesn't matter. Fewer people would agree with this assertion. Slacks argues that since neither team will push high ground before 40 or 50 minutes into the game, the early game is essentially irrelevant. The game is balanced around the idea that if one team gets a decisive advantage in the early game, they can leverage that advantage into a prompt and controlled victory. However, at low MMRs, this is much less likely. A team with a decisive lead in a low MMR match, or even in higher MMR matches, will almost inevitably take too many risks and will very likely forfeit their advantage with aggressive, reckless, and uncoordinated play. They might even be reluctant to finish because they're, well, having fun. Then, when, or if they do die, the Dota 2 comeback mechanics ensure that the other team has at least a good chance of clawing the game back. However, despite all of these compelling arguments, I actually disagree with Slacks on this point. I think the early game does matter.
But why?
Well, a snowballing enemy carry's tendency to throw themselves gleefully into certain death is only really an issue if the other team is vigilant and careful enough to take advantage of these mistakes, and often by that stage they will have already given up. The early game generally determines team morale as well as any given player's opinion of their team. I've had teammates call GG at 2 minutes in because we are 2-0 down, and this often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The solution is to reassure them, but try not to make it an argument that they can win by losing the game. There's nothing more frustrating than reading a message from your ally saying, "See, I told you it was GG." Number 3. Classic support heroes are useless. So in a team that probably has 4 cores, we're gonna need to pick a support. However, Slacks and I agree on the fact that in a low MMR game you should almost never choose a traditional support hero such as Crystal Maiden, Shadow Shaman, or Dazzle. These heroes are simply not effective at very low MMRs.
But why?
Well, it's a question of choosing the practical over the theoretical. The reason that heroes like Shadow Shaman fail at low MMRs is that they have very low hit points and rely on coordinating with their allies, something that is not realistic when your allies don't understand concepts like lane equilibrium and positioning. Worse, fragile intelligence supports quickly become food for enemy cores and usually rely on their allies for protection. This is part of the reason that low MMR players themselves know not to pick supports. They've done it and they've had really bad experiences when they've been killed repeatedly by a snowballing Slark or a PA, and their allies don't come to their defense. So, our presumed situation is that the enemy team has 5 carries, all of which plan to win the game by becoming the strongest player on the map in the late game. Your own team has 4 players with the same plan. These 2 teams are going to farm as much as they can and repeatedly clash with each other, and your job is to choose the hero that will allow you to best ensure that your allies triumph. So what kind of hero should you choose? Number 1. Effectiveness not dependent on farm. Your allies will probably already be fighting over farm, so it's crucial to pick a hero who can be useful without gold. Number 2. Threatening at very early levels. You need to pick a hero who can occupy the attention of multiple enemies during the early game, providing space for your team to farm while preventing enemies from farming by forcing them to engage with you. Number 3. Survivable at all stages of the game. Your teammates are probably not going to protect you or make any effort to coordinate with you, so you need to pick a hero who is strong enough to wade into fights to where you're needed without immediately being torn apart. So there are some obvious options. You could pick Ogre with his Disables and Bloodlust, Sand King for his AoE stun and escapes, Tidehunter for his ability to reduce both damage and armor, which is amazing with and against heavy core lineups, or even a support Kunkka for the comfort that at least you'll be able to transition in the late game. All of these heroes are honestly great options, but we can do even better. Slacks believes that he's found the answer with Omni Knight, and it's hard to disagree with him. As well as meeting all of our requirements, Omni also has Purification, which allows you to prevent your allies from feeding. In any clash between melee carries, Omni is able to pretty much guarantee that his side will win. He is able to sustain his team with both health and mana, and the best part is, in that one late game team fight that really matters, Omni Knight will probably be able to negate the entire enemy team's damage with his ultimate Guardian Angel. If you like Omni Knight, then by all means play him. He has the highest win rate in the below 2k bracket. Yeah, well, the thing is, this isn't actually Slacks' video, this is my video. And my video isn't about Omni Knight. Abaddon has most of what Omni Knight has, and he makes up for the lack of Guardian Angel with superior aggression, superior survivability, and the power to push both creep waves and towers without constantly having to rely on the rest of his team. He not only synergizes incredibly well with all 8 of the popular high mobility, high damage heroes I mentioned earlier, but also works brilliantly with Earthshaker, Pudge, Leshrac, Luna, Axe, Timbersaw, Troll, Lifestealer, OD, and basically anybody but a ranged high disabled support like Enigma or Shadow Shaman. Ban either Omni Knight or Ancient Apparition and encourage your allies to pick melee, carries, and hopefully a jungler. Buy a Stout Shield, 2 branches, a Salve, Tangos, and an Observer Ward, but give up the Salve and a branch for a courier if no one else is going to buy it. Hedge the off lane, solo if at all possible for the golden experience advantage. Use your Observer Ward to block the enemy pull camp if their safe lane has a smarmy guy who thinks that picking an ineffective support and feeding all game long somehow exonerates him from playing when his team inevitably loses. As you can see from the clips I've been showing you, Abaddon is an absolute beast of an offlaner, so try and encourage one of your teammates to jungle, ideally a Bloodseeker or a Legion Commander. If someone does insist on crashing your party though, don't take his farm, just push the lane until it's far enough out that you can do a side pull to get yourself some gold and experience. Level as follows: max Aphotic Shield by 7, taking levels of Curse of Avernus at 2 and 4. Level Borrowed Time whenever possible, and then max Mist Coil once you hit level 7. As for items in lane, you should almost always build a Magic Wand and a Ring of Basilius. Magic Wand is amazing on Abaddon for most of the game because his spells have such a low mana cost and because he spends so much time frontlining. Your goal is to save for your core items, Arcane Boots and Vlads. Blue Boots provide the mana your team needs to go for kills while also ensuring that you have the mana you need to stop them from dying. Vlads is great because it provides all your allies with health sustain, armor, and bonus damage. Make sure no one else in your team buys Vlads though. Encourage your Ursa to build a Helm of the Dominator or a Mask of Madness instead, for example. You could also get a Drum. It's great for the mobility and provides another aura to help your carries dominate. Abaddon trades incredibly well with enemies in lane because of Curse of Avernus and Aphotic Shield, so whenever the creeps meet, just slip on a shield, run at the enemies and hit them with your sword, while missing as few last hits as possible. He's also very good at tower diving with his shield, and once he hits level 6, tower dives and creep cuts are just compulsory. Abaddon's the only hero who actually has an advantage under enemy towers. Sometimes they heal him and sometimes they help him trigger his shields. Once you have Arcane Boots, a level of Mist Coil, and you've smashed down the tier 3 tower, it's time to join up with the rest of your team. Now you know why Abaddon is so broken in the early game, it's time to look at what he contributes once he leaves lane. There's a lot of decision making and map awareness involved. If your team is playing aggressively or you think a fight might break out, teleport there so you can be ready with a heal and a shield. If your TP scroll is on cooldown, you might just want to run there while imploring your teammates to wait for you. If you're lucky, you'll get there just in time to save someone with a shield, which will be your main responsibility for the rest of the game. The shield can also be used to purge disables, but you should be very careful of area disables which might prevent you from casting it in time. Saving your allies, especially hard carries, from death is how you will win the game. You deny gold to the enemy, you keep your hard carry alive long enough for them to pick up the kill they wanted in the first place, and you might well pick up some commends along the way. You see, she's still alive. Alternatively, if most of your team is farming passively and doesn't seem to be in any immediate danger, you shouldn't just stand there and hope for the best. Use this time to farm your next item, Guardian Greaves, for even more sustain and because they grant any ally that drops below 20% health a massive bonus 15 armor. You can even try and take down towers solo if you want by shielding and healing the creep in front, using Mist Coil first so as to save the shield burst for when the enemy creep wave arrives. This kind of pushing quickly drains your resources and can be dangerous in the unlikely event of a quick and coordinated response, but it gives your team a huge advantage if you can pull it off, and you're often survivable enough to TP out or just walk away. You could also team up with another ally who's also ready to fight, hopefully one who has some kind of initiation and a little damage, and hopefully a blink dagger. Abaddon isn't a great ganker as he lacks both disables and damage, but he can ensure that his ally isn't in danger, and sometimes Mist Coil is just the thing you need to finish off a particularly slippery hero. If you think your team is ahead and you have sustain ready, then ping the next objective and tell your team to group as 5 because it's time to finish the game. Abaddon is great at smashing down towers with Curse of Avernus, but if your enemies are prepared you might want to hang back so as to ensure you're able to negate their initiation. Forcing fights from now on is usually a great idea because you'll usually be able to protect whoever the enemy attempt to focus down. If you've done well in the early game and mid game, then at this stage there's a good chance your carries won't need you anymore. And this is very much part of the plan. You picked Abaddon for the MMR, not for the glory. Pay attention in every fight for disables to purge and for allies with low hit points to save, and when in doubt prioritize heroes with high damage. You can tell you've done a great job of managing your team's health and mana when you win a team fight and all your teammates have just barely survived despite all having been reduced to a sliver of health. It's an incredibly satisfying experience. Even if your allies seem overwhelmed, don't give up on them. You might just be able to hold out long enough for them to get a lucky crit, or for another ally to come to the rescue. Objectives should be falling fast now, and you can pick up some luxury items. Scepter, Crimson Guard, Pipe, Necro Book, AC and Octarine Core are all totally fine depending on the situation. When you do win a team fight, you'll be able to quickly break high ground with Curse of Avernus, and make sure you do that cool thing where you apply the debuff to both racks at once. So as you can see, my Abaddon can be very effective. I have almost a 70% win rate as Abaddon after spamming him in solo ranked matchmaking. Thank you for watching my guide, I hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to like my video if you find that this playstyle works for you.